We all know about the Black Death, but no one talks about the day after it ended. What happens when a medieval megacity loses half its people overnight? The history books tell us London continued to function, but what did that actually look like? How did they manage food supply, hygiene, and the overwhelming presence of death with a broken infrastructure? To find out, we used artificial intelligence to reconstruct a full 24-hour cycle of life in this era. You are about to experience history not through dry records, but through the tangible, gritty, everyday conditions of survival. If you enjoyed the video, please like it and write your opinion about the question at the end of this video in the comments. In the year 1350, London does not wake up to the sound of progress, but to the crushing weight of its own silence. The Black Death has officially retreated, but it has left behind a world that is fundamentally broken. As the sun rises over the Thames, it reveals a city of ghosts, where nearly half the hearths remain cold, and every second door tells a story of loss. To understand this new reality, one must look at the local baker. As he opens his heavy wooden shutters, he no longer faces a bustling street. Directly across from him sits the blacksmith's forge, once the loudest, busiest corner of the parish. Now the forge is cold, the door is still marked with the fading red cross of the plague, and the windows are boarded shut. The blacksmith, his family, and his apprentices are gone, buried in the mass pits beyond the city walls. This is the new face of London, a landscape of dead trades and empty shells. The baker's daily routine reflects a massive systemic collapse in English agriculture. Before the plague, he spent his mornings kneading fine white dough for the wealthy. But today, wheat is a rare, expensive luxury. With the countryside depopulated, there were fewer hands to plow the heavy soils required for wheat. Instead, the baker handles coarse, dark rye and barley. The resulting loaves are heavy, grayish-brown, and bitter. They aren't meant to please the palate. They are the survival grains of a starving population. The morning meal has shifted from a social ritual to a mechanical necessity. Even the simple act of drinking water has become a gamble with death. In this hollowed-out city, the soil itself has become a cemetery. The proximity of overflowing burial pits to parish wells has rendered the water table toxic. To drink from the well is to invite the ghost of the plague back into the home. Consequently, London begins its day on a diet of small beer or weak ale. From the youngest child to the oldest survivor, fermented grain is the only safe source of hydration in a world where the earth itself has turned poisonous. As the morning progresses, the physical city begins a process of self-cannibalization. This is the era of the Great Recycling. With labor so scarce and expensive, building new homes is an impossible dream. Instead, survivors look to the abandoned houses next door, like that of the dead blacksmith. They strip the lead from the roofs and tear out the oak beams for firewood, leaving the stone skeletons to collapse under the rain. London is no longer expanding, it is contracting, pulling its remaining resources inward just to keep the heart of the city beating. By midday, the sun stands high over Cheapside, the commercial heart of London. In the years before the plague, this hour was a cacophony of thousands of voices, a place where you could barely move through the throngs of shoppers. Now the market is different. There are fewer people, but a strange, dark prosperity has emerged. This is the era of death wealth. Suddenly, survivors are walking the streets wearing high-quality furs and silk tunics that belonged to the victims of the plague. In the absence of heirs, gold and fine goods have trickled down to those who never dreamed of owning them. However, beneath this thin veil of luxury, a massive power struggle is reaching its boiling point. Midday is when the new reality of labor hits the ruling elite. To see this tension, look at a local construction site. A master carpenter is being asked to repair a sagging roof. Before the plague, he would have been grateful for the work. Now he stands with his arms crossed, demanding 3 times his old wage. He knows the truth. Half of his rivals are dead. He is no longer a replaceable servant. He is a rare commodity. This shift has sent the English government into a state of panic. At the center of the market, a royal official nails a parchment to a post, the Statute of Laborers. It is a desperate law commanded by the king, ordering that no worker can ask for more than they earned in 1346. It even makes it illegal for a worker to refuse a job. But the law is failing before it's even read. The labor shortage is so severe that even the wealthy are secretly breaking the law, paying their workers higher under-the-table wages just to keep their estates from falling into ruin. The legal system itself has become a ghost court. Midday sessions at the Guildhall are overwhelmed, not by criminals, but by endless disputes over inheritance. With entire families wiped out, distant cousins and complete strangers are fighting over houses, shops, and titles. Lawyers are among the few who are busier than ever, trying to untangle the messy lineages of a city where the family tree has been brutally pruned. As the sun begins its slow descent, the infrastructure of London shows its scars. Midday reveals the lack of maintenance that a city of this scale requires. Carts struggle to navigate streets where the cobblestones are cracking and the central drains are blocked with refuse. There are simply not enough hands to keep the city's veins clear. London is functioning, but it is a city under immense tension, a place where the poor have discovered their power and the rich are terrified of a world they can no longer control. As the afternoon sun hangs low, the physical reality of London's decay becomes impossible to ignore. In a city built for 80,000, now inhabited by barely 40, the basic systems of survival are breaking down. To see this, one only needs to look at the kennel, the shallow stone gutter running down the center of the street. Before the plague, a small army of rakers or street cleaners worked constantly to keep these channels clear. Now, with the workforce decimated, the rakers are gone. The gutters are choked with rotting animal remains, household waste, and stagnant filth that hasn't moved in weeks. In the heat of the afternoon, the city breathes a toxic air. In the 14th century, people believed in miasm, the idea that bad smells literally carried disease. For the survivors, every gust of wind from a blocked drain is a psychological assault. The smell of the city is no longer just unpleasant, it is a reminder of the invisible killer that took their families. Those who can afford it carry bouquets of dried lavender or pomanders filled with spices, pressing them to their noses as they walk. It is a desperate, fragrant shield against a world that smells of rot. As evening approaches, the city's relationship with its river, the Thames, takes a dark turn. The river remains London's primary vein for waste disposal, but the gung farmers, the men who empty the city's cesspits under the cover of darkness, are now charging astronomical fees for their dangerous work. Many households, unable to pay, are simply letting their waste overflow. The infrastructure of hygiene is collapsing, and the city is slowly drowning in its own refuse. By early evening, the sound of the curfew bell rings out from the half-empty towers of St. Paul's Cathedral. In the past, this was a signal for the end of a busy workday. Now, it sounds like a warning. The city gates begin to close, and the massive stone walls of London, which once felt like a shield against invaders, now feel like a cage. The evening light reveals the stripping of the city at its peak. Shadows stretch across streets where entire blocks have been abandoned. To walk through these areas is to witness a city in retreat, as survivors clustered together in a few inhabited houses for warmth and safety, leaving the rest of London to the rats and the encroaching weeds. The church, once the absolute center of evening life, is struggling to keep its candles lit. With so many priests and monks dead, the evening vespers or prayers are shorter, quieter, and filled with a lingering question: why did God spare some and take others? As the stars begin to appear, the city holds its breath. The day is over, but for the officials of London, the most difficult work is about to begin in the shadows of the night. As night falls, London descends into an obsidian darkness that no modern mind can truly comprehend. There are no streetlights, only the occasional flickering glow of a tallow candle behind a barred window. The city walls, once built to keep out invading armies, now seem to trap the heavy, stagnant air of a graveyard within. In the silence of the night, the sounds of the city change. The roar of commerce is replaced by the scratching of scavengers. Rats, emboldened by the abundance of empty houses and uncollected waste, move freely through the cobblestones. But there is another sound, deeper and more rhythmic: the heavy wheels of the dead carts. Although the peak of the plague has passed, the grim work of clearing the backlog of bodies continues under the cover of darkness. In 1350, burial is a midnight industry. To avoid further panic and to hide the sheer scale of the loss, officials move the remains of entire families to the plague pits outside the city limits, mass graves where the individual is forgotten and only the collective tragedy remains. The church, once the eternal light in the dark, is now a place of exhausted shadows. A lone priest might keep watch, but the prayers are weary. The Black Death hasn't just taken bodies, it has challenged the very foundations of faith. As the survivors huddle in their beds, they live in a state of hypervigilance. Every cough, every sudden fever in the night feels like a death sentence. But as the final hours of the night pass, a strange realization begins to take hold. London is still here. The city has been pruned to its core, its systems are broken, and its streets are half empty, but the heart is still beating. The morning will bring more bitter bread and more hard labor, but it will also bring the chance to rebuild. The 14th century did not end with the death of London. It began a new, brutal chapter where the survivors finally realized their own worth. London survived the liquid dead of its graveyards and the collapse of its world. It transformed from a crowded medieval maze into a city that would eventually lead the world. But that transformation was paid for in blood, bone, and a silence that lasted for generations. Thank you for traveling back in time with us. If this atmospheric journey into the dark heart of history moved you, please hit the like button and subscribe to join our future explorations. And now for our question of the day. Imagine it's 1350, you're starving, and you pass a house marked with a red cross. Inside, on the bed of a dead merchant, sits a bag of gold that could buy you a new life. But the merchant's body is still there, and the air is thick with the scent of the plague. Do you take the gold and gamble with eternity, or do you walk away and stay hungry? The gold or your life? Tell me your choice in the comments.